so he's going to be coming in mid-morning. I think he might be in the air now. I'm not sure. We'll be talking a lot about Casper here at the Developers Retreat. And Nate, if you want to give your update, then I'll get to talk about liveness a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
155.
We're going this way.
Cool. So Danny's away currently on honeymoon. So I've just been kind of cleaning things, and also kind of the big push this week is to kind of make the network and message propagation significantly more realistic. So currently, or at least the repo we presented at DevCon, the messages, included all the messages in their justification when they were actually sent. So what that means is, like, if you received a message, you could always just look through its justification and pull out any messages you didn't have, which is obviously, totally unrealistic. So kind of the big push this week, and the thing I've just finished yesterday was pretty much get it so messages arrive. If they're not totally justified yet, meaning they don't have all the messages in their justification, they're put in like a pending area, and then we kind of wait for the messages that justify them, and then once we get all of those and they're justified, then we resolve that message, kind of like a pub sub thing.
Sure.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, and there's an outstanding PR. And then other than that, the other big thing was, and it turns out this is something Vlad and I have talked about before, but I forgot. So, one thing that's cool about Casper is it promises, in the best case, the low network overhead of like a probabilistic proof of work blockchain, like, 1 messages per block. That obviously doesn't hold necessarily if we kind of force validators to include everything they see in their justification. Then it kind of becomes, we get like, the size of a hash times, however many validators there are in each justification and each message. So, the first thing is, okay, we'll only store differences in justification. But the other thing that I've been working on is like figuring out a nice way of kind of saying, if parts of the justification are implicitly encoded in the like prev block pointers of an estimate, then kind of you don't have to store them in your justification. So what's cool about this is, like, for example, in the case of the round robin, all validators messages or all validators justifications would be totally empty. And so we really do get the network overhead of a probabilistic proof of work blockchain. Like, it's literally 0 extra bytes, but you get finality, which is kind of crazy, but pretty fun. So yeah, anyways, efforts there, and that's it. One more thing. The repo has been starting to get looked at by some people who are kind of, starting to contribute, which is really cool. And someone named Sean, who I'm sure will come to a stand up in the future, has kind of started work on like a nice like web interface for kind of running simulations, which is kind of exciting. If we don't have to manually close graphs all the time. But anyways, yeah, that's it for me.
Sweet. That's an awesome update. That's fantastic. Really, really cool. So I just want to like quickly just let everyone see that some of the members of the team. Hey guys, this is the Casper stand up. I got a lot of good folks here at the Archain Developers Retreat. We were just chatting last night. I've been thinking a little bit about so these different operations. So in particular, there's proposal and promote, and I think it's very clear now that if you have I guess I've been calling it political capital that must be committed in order to do proposals. And that's not redistributed until after you reach the end of the consensus cycle. Then you end up,
Sorry. Just to clarify, when you say reach the end of the consensus cycle, do you mean achieve finality on something, or do you just mean, after the end of the round?
So I mean that the block is agreed on. So yes, it's a form of finality.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's redistributed when the block is agreed upon. Then so what that clearly limits the total number of proposals. And now the other incentives are one only gets transaction fees on blocks that one has that have been committed and that one has proposed for or promoted on, and the lion's share goes to the proposer. It works the other way around. So the proposers are spending the political capital, and the promoters are earning the political capital, and that's distributed based upon the promotion. Now, the next thing is we're going to measure time in terms of history depth in the justifications, and you put a exponential curve on the fees.
Sorry. Okay. So just to ask you a question there. So, like, for example, history depth in the justification, that means that, like, you take the max current height in your justification and you add 1, and that's the new history depth.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. There are actually a couple of different ways you can measure it, but that's not a bad proxy. Okay. So that gives you how time is marching on relative to a particular view of the message flow.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Okay, so and that's different from wall clock time.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and so you put an exponential curve on the fees relative to the time that we just let's call that I don't know, absolute time or consensus time. So now what you've done is you've placed a pressure to come to some kind of agreement faster, because the longer you engage, the less you're going to get a payoff. And now,
okay, so faster. So faster in this case, does that mean with less messages essentially?
Yeah, effectively with a shorter history.
Cool.
A shorter history depth in the justification.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then the next piece of the puzzle is we want to make sure that there's every opportunity, and this is related to this same idea of diminishing fees with respect to the history depth. You want to make sure that there's every opportunity to collapse proposals. So if the proposals are in no way in conflict, they can be collapsed. All right. So you can.
So for example, okay. So just to make sure I follow, like if we had 2 blocks at the same height that none of the transactions in either block conflict with any of the transactions. Conflict meaning let's say at the state.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So
cool. This sounds kind of like the rewrite system thing, Vlad.
Yeah, exactly.
I never followed.
Yeah. So call that operation join. So now we have 3 operations. You have propose, promote, and join. Okay. So what that does is it shrinks the proposal queue, and so now you only ever get proposals that are in conflict, and you have a pressure to resolve that. I mean, the best you can do is to force a pressure to resolve it. Otherwise you'd be solving FOP impossibility. But what we've done is we've introduced economic pressure to resolve it, so that what we're saying is the parties are incentivized not to commit. Plus, they also have the slashing condition incentives, so they're incentivized to come to consensus, and that's like a separate dimension. Like the thing about FOP impossibility is it's reducing everything just to the messages and the consensus state, and it's not taking into account any other incentives, right? So, but in that situation, the incentives to introduce the Byzantine faults that are not, like network-based faults, that are agent-based faults. The incentives to do that are not measured in the argument, right? So in order to account for Byzantine faults that arise from the agency, you have to move over to this other dimension where you talk about the incentives or motivations or intent of the agency that's involved in the consensus process. So then the argument is, with these particular pressures, you effectively eliminate any incentive to create to have agent-based Byzantine faults, and so the only Byzantine faults that are left standing are the network ones. And here we have, pretty strong evidence that we have resilient enough networks that's a very, very rare occurrence. So this is the line of thinking that I'm looking at. Also, there's another direction that's associated with this. If you notice, each of these particular verbs, propose, promote, and join, they actually line up with the combinators. So propose is the Yoshida or the row calculus, the row combinators message combinator. Promote is the forwarder combinator. And join is a variant of the kill combinator that kills off a line of messaging, because what it's really doing is it's smashing two together into one. So you can also get some that opens up a line of investigation related to combinators for consensus protocols, and sort of a sense of being able to argue about the expressiveness of the protocol.
Wow, cool. So I guess kind of at a high level, it does to some degree sound like a specific incentive scheme for something like a CBC Casper, just in the sense of I guess it seems like we could mandate that weights decrease or fees decrease exponentially given height and justification height or whatever as well, which is interesting. But yeah, sounds really cool. I didn't totally follow the part about the combinators, but it sounds like a very interesting area of inquiry, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't go any further with the embedding the trace monoidal thing into a more relaxed categorical setting in terms of the Byzantine fault tolerance, but that's sort of for this coming week. I'm going to take a look at that more carefully. Anyway, that's my update, and it's good to keep this short and sweet. I need to jump back over to the developer retreat, but
Good luck.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See everyone. Bye-bye, guys.